welcome to the Peak Experience. This is Peak Support's podcast where we talk about the agent experience and the employee experience and how all of those two things interconnect. And I'm excited to be here with my co-host, Jess Elgene.
Hi.
And Declan Ivory. Declan Ivory is VP of Customer Support at Intercom, which is one of our tech partners. So we're super excited to have him on the show today. Thank you so much, Declan, for being here.
Thanks, Anna. Delighted to be here and have the opportunity to have a good conversation with you. My own background, I've been involved in customer service, customer support for almost 35 years. So I've seen quite a bit of change over that time. I've been 2 years at Intercom and really excited by the changes that we're seeing, particularly in the ability to use AI to really transform the customer experience and also the agent experience. So it's a really exciting area and an area that we've been very focused on here at Intercom. So looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we're really interested in diving in on is talking about the history of AI at Intercom, as well as how the Intercom customer support team has used your platform.
Yeah, so Intercom has always been quite innovative in terms of the technologies that it's looking at to apply to its platform, and has kind of a lot of heritage in using AI and ML historically. So, for example, we had things like Custom Bot, Resolution Bot prior to ChatGPT, which I think it's 1 year old today, is what I hear. Hard to believe it's a year since ChatGPT appeared. But obviously, the advent of generative AI has opened up new opportunities. And Intercom was kind of uniquely positioned to incorporate GPT technologies and generative AI technologies into its platform because it had effectively built in AI ML for quite a number of years into the platform to deliver some core capability for our customers. So from that point of view, I feel kind of pretty privileged in that as the VP of support here at Intercom, I get the opportunity to use the same platform as my customers, which is quite a unique situation for a leader of support. And obviously, as Intercom began to build out its ChatGPT capability, or Fin as we call it, that's our name for a chatbot, I had the opportunity to effectively be the first beta customer for Fin. That was a pretty exciting opportunity, not just for us here within support, but the team in particular were really excited about the opportunity to really try this technology, see how it worked. The team itself got some insights into the power of AI prior to the launch of Fin, because we built some features into our inbox, things like conversation summary, conversation tone change, etc. And they really enjoyed the experience of using AI in that context and really getting to understand how I might change the way that they do their own role. So that was a pretty good introduction for the team. They embraced it and actually gave some really positive feedback to our own product team, as well as some good suggestions as to how they could improve the product. So our team
was started out using AI on the back end, more of an agent
on the back end initially.
Tool.
Yeah, but we pivoted very quickly to kind of using the chat bot for customer interactions. In that we saw that as the real power in terms of changing the customer experience. So I say we became the first beta customer for Fin, and because we had put a lot of effort in towards the tail end of last year, early part of this year, changing the architecture for our automation platform. So we pivoted to use our own product called Workflows. We hadn't really embraced all of the automation opportunity within our own platform. Interestingly enough, you think we would have as Intercom, but like lots of things, we were probably a little bit behind some of our customers. And we spent this year trying to actually get ahead of our customers and really understand what are some of the challenges they're going to face in implementing new technology and new features that we launch. So we had rebuilt our whole automation layer, which meant that when Fin was on beta, we were able to actually plug it in literally overnight. And like everything, we were a little bit apprehensive, like what does it mean for our customers? What does it mean for our support team? And we kind of targeted a subset of our customers initially to roll this out to. And I think a number of things happened. Like one, it was quite clear that the customer experience
you adopted it overnight. You didn't phase it in. You just said we're using it tomorrow, but only for a subset of customers. So
only for a subset of customers.
You did kind of test it out.
Yeah, so we limited the exposure in that we really wanted to see what did it mean for a particular set of customers. Would it perform well, and then we could make decisions on how we would apply it afterwards. So we were quite excited about launching it, but also quite apprehensive.
What customers did you choose to start with?
There were what we call our early stage customers, and the main reason for that is they tend to have some very similar questions. So we kind of knew that we had good knowledge articles that would probably address a lot of the issues. So we'd be actually able to see how Fin performs, where it does have access to some good knowledge in the background, and does it then actually deliver the answer in a way that is good for the customer and the customer feels that the issue is resolved. So we kind of
So that was
determined
something that's interesting, because that's something that probably a lot of software companies can do, where they can segment their customers based on how long they've been with the company. Are they new customers? Are they small customers? It might be harder for other industries, like, for example, e-commerce. It's not necessarily so easy to say, okay, this subset of customers is going to have all the same type of questions.
Right.
But that's it sounds like a really good strategy for other software companies, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. But even in the kind of, let's say, more consumer space, like, you can always say, I'm going to apply to a percentage of my conversations, and then you have kind of an A/B type testing environment. You can really look, did it actually impact versus the the control group. So there's lots of ways you can implement.
Start small. Any company could start small.
Risk. Yeah. So for us, we found out very quickly that, one, customers didn't have any kind of allergic reaction to it. In fact, they actually seemed to enjoy the opportunity to interface with an AI chatbot.
But now, you were already using Resolution Bot, right? So it wasn't like bots were totally new to your customers.
Correct. It wasn't like bots were totally new, even though we weren't using Resolution Bot very pervasively. Okay. Within our own support operation for a variety of reasons. But even so, I think the experience with the AI chatbot bit and GPT is quite different to the experience with other bots. And again, we were intrigued to see, well, how would customers react to that experience versus what they had already seen through Resolution Bot and our own custom bot environments. And again, the reaction was quite positive from our customers. They liked the interaction, and we were quite clear with customers. They were talking to an AI chatbot. We were very transparent on that. We probably did a little bit of tuning after getting some initial feedback. So, for example, we have a big focus on what we call conversation design. In fact, we've hired in a conversation designer to look at the end-to-end flow of the customer journey. And particularly in the context of launching Fin, we wanted to make sure that, like, Fin would hand over to our automation layer called workflows, and workflows would hand over to human support. And we wanted to make sure that in that journey, we weren't adding any friction that we didn't need to add in. And in particular, we wanted to ensure that if Fin didn't answer a question, that when it handed over to human support, we were using skills-based routing to actually get it to an expert who would then answer the question directly. And, whereas before we had a more generous pool of support specialists, support engineers, and they could basically get topics in from or questions in from any particular topic area. So we had a more kind of focused skills-based routing approach, which our team loved, because it allowed them to become really expert on a particular component or a number of components of the product. And they also loved the fact that the more mundane, straightforward questions, which they didn't really enjoy answering on a repeat basis, they were now being taken out of the system. So it was kind of a win-win for customers. They were getting immediate answers for some of the very straightforward stuff. They were then getting through to an expert if they didn't get Fin to answer their question. And our own team then got the opportunity to really become subject matter experts in particular components of the product, which they really enjoy. It's actually a better role.
Yeah, and we want to talk a lot about that later on as well, just how this has reshaped your workforce. But tell me, you mentioned that you had to make some tweaks early on. What are some of the tweaks that you had to make to improve Fin in the beginning?
Yeah, so I think there's probably two components to that. Like the dialogue between Fin and the customer, we looked very carefully at that just to see, is there any tuning we needed to give around that in terms of how Fin presents to the customer, what options it presents, for example, if it doesn't answer a question directly. So we made some slight tuning to that. But the biggest part of tuning was just looking at the knowledge base and making sure that the knowledge base was working as effectively as possible. Again, we were pretty lucky in that we had a pretty comprehensive knowledge center or set of knowledge articles. There were some interesting things that came up, like, for example, you had something in an FAQ format. And if, for example, in an FAQ, you had a question and you said yes or no as the answer to the question, human can read that very clearly and can make sense of it as an FAQ. Sometimes an AI engine doesn't read that very well and doesn't always present the right answer if it's simply an FAQ that's presented to it as a yes and no to question. And we learned that
just saying yes. So an agent would ask a question and Fin would just say no, or how was that creating issues?
So Fin wouldn't be able to necessarily always interpret that. So what we thought was, it was better to say, or like write out the answer in full. If your question was, does the product do X? Rather than just say yes, you say, yes, the product does do X.
Right.
And then the engine is actually much better chance of correlating that as the right answer for the question.
Yeah.
So there were some small things like that where thinking about the layout of knowledge, so having stuff in bullet points rather than in large blobs of text. And I say for things like FAQs, making sure you weren't just giving a simple yes, no, which is very easy for a human to interpret, but not so easy for an AI engine to interpret.
Right.
They were just some of the tweaks that we identified early on to try and tune Fin. And then we move.
How did you work on the knowledge base? Did you have, because a lot of times customer support agents, team leads are pretty busy. You know, it's not usually someone's job to be, you know, I find this as a challenge with a lot of our clients when the knowledge base needs to be updated. It's like, who's going to do it? Because everyone's already got a full-time job. So how did you handle that at Intercom? Because it's a huge part of getting ready for AI is getting the
It is a huge part. Yeah, and it's actually, you know, knowledge is always important from a support point of view, particularly if you're trying to drive any kind of self-serve. Like our help center is exposed externally and people can self-serve on the help center if they want. So we've always had a pretty good focus on knowledge, but it takes on a much more critically important now in an AI world. So we had someone who was effectively our help center manager, and they are responsible for ensuring that, you know, our help center is up to date. They work very closely on our new product introduction process. They will make sure that articles are being reviewed on a regular basis. But in terms of actually updating the content, we have this concept of what we call them specialties, that are specialty teams. And we have one for knowledge management. So basically we crowdsource across our support agents, and they will, you know, based on the work that our health center leader comes up with, they will update articles or create new articles based on a kind of a schedule of work. So we do crowdsource from within the support team, but we actually allocate hours for people to do that work outside of the inbox. So we factor that into our whole capacity planning approach and into kind of our workforce management approach as well. They do have time to actually take part in these specialty teams, one of which is looking at knowledge creation and knowledge management.
And were you doing that already before Fin, or is that a new structure that you've added?
No, we were doing that already. We've obviously had to, I suppose, increase the capacity and the focus of that team, because now, as I say, knowledge it's much more critical in this environment. And now our health center leader is now our content manager rather than our health center leader, because it's not just our health center articles that will feed Fin. You can now feed in a lot of other data sources into Fin. So we're looking at a kind of a more comprehensive content strategy overall. And we're also looking at how do we manage internal knowledge as well as external knowledge, because again, using AI in the inbox, like you can use AI to interrogate your internal knowledge as well, and, you know, present that to a support rep to say, hey, here's a suggested answer for the customer question, and the rep can take it or not take it or adjust it if they don't like the wording, etc. So we now have to look differently at content. It's not just about the external help center, it's also the internal help knowledge, or internal knowledge center as well. And there are other data sources that we want to feed into the Fin as well. So that kind of whole content strategy.
Those other data sources. What other data sources can Fin bring in, and what have you used as data sources for your support team?
Yeah, so it can Fin can take in any public URL. It can take in help center information from Intercom. It can take in help center information from Zendesk. It can take in raw PDFs. Like there's a whole, we're increasing the content types all the time that Fin can ingest.
Can you talk specifically though about what would you use for your own support desk? What's useful? What kind of external sources? Because you don't want to go too broad. You never know what the bot's going to deliver. So what specifically have you been feeding it?
Yeah, so for our own use case, a lot of it has been around the help center information. Given who we are, we've put a lot of investment in our help center anyway. We have looked at like how do we dynamically add more content. So as an example, when a conversation is closed, AI will kick back in, it'll look at the conversation, it'll provide a summary of the conversation and a summary of the question and a summary of the answer that was given. And it would actually say to the engineer, does this represent the dialogue you just had with the customer? And if the customer says yes, that gets added as what we call a snippet into Fin. And it's adding to the knowledge outside of the help center. So we've used snippets as another source. So it's basically trying to learn from the interactions you have with the customer anyway, and trying to then prevent that interaction coming in the future, because hopefully with the snippet, you've got the knowledge in Fin where it'll answer the question going forward. So snippets was another
the
area.
Agent checks that off, or the customer? So
the agent.
The agent gets is this happening on every conversation? The agent is getting a summary and saying, yes, this is accurate. No, it's not.
It can happen. Now, again, we've kind of we've scaled it back a little bit because how do you manage the volume? So again,
that was my follow-up question. That's another big extra task.
It's an interesting task. So we kind of, for want of a better way, so we got a kind of a quick start on it. So we got a lot of snippets in to kind of solve a lot of problems. And now we're looking at how do we then manage that over time. So best practice in the space is evolving. We don't have all the answers yet around how we're going to manage that content to scale. That's part of the challenge for the coming year. But it's definitely an important component of being able to update the information that Finn has access to based on the conversations that you have with your customers. So snippets is a really good strategy overall. We just need to look at how do we manage it at scale. But we did a kind of a quick starter where we did expose it to everyone, and we got a lot of kind of snippet knowledge very quickly, which helped us then with kind of improving our resolution rate in Finn. Another example is we have developer documents as well, which we're currently in the process of restructuring those so Finn can ingest the developer documents. And once we do that, we expect that we can answer more complex queries for customers as well, because obviously there's a lot more technical detail within our developer docs. And if we get those ingested into Finn, we think there's quite a different style of question or issue that Finn can then answer. It'll be able to answer more complex questions. So this is a very evolved
place. How do you restructure those developer docs so they can be read by AI?
Again, developer docs could have been structured with a lot of graphics or images in it. They're not currently well handled from an AI point of view. How do you make sure there's text that kind of documents what the image says? There's a lot of complexities around it. Also, the platform that we used to publish it on originally, Finn didn't ingest the data there very well, so we had to re-platform it, etc. So there's a few things, and these are some of the interesting kind of challenges that you face, because it sounds easy. I'll just feed content into my AI engine, but you got to think about the formatting. How does the AI engine read it? If it's tagged, the source is tagged in some way. How does it read the tags? Or the markup language or whatever. So all types of complexities in here. That makes it interesting. This is the content management piece is actually, I think, the more interesting space at the minute. How do you make sure you get the best content possible that ensures that your AI engine is actually fully aware of your business knowledge and presenting that knowledge in a very clear way to your customers? That's the most interesting deployment at the minute.
I think a lot of people don't realize that for an AI bot, not all data is created equal. AI can't read an image the same way they can read text. And so there's actually a lot of human involvement that goes into making that data readable by AI.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is what, one of the interesting parts of where we are on this AI driven journey. How do we do the whole content management piece, content creation piece? That's actually, as I say, probably more interesting than the AI itself right here, right now. So definitely a lot of focus on that at the moment.
Yeah, to Hannah's point about the need for some human intervention with the implementation of AI, I'm curious about new roles that have been created as a result of Finn's implementation. I know you mentioned the conversation designer and things like that, but what are some other human pieces to it?
Good question. So again, we've kind of we've had a knowledge management role, but we've kind of recrafted it. It's more content management, content strategy role. So that's a change role as well. It's looking more pervasively at all of the information that we might use both internally and externally, and then how do we manage that content over time? That's another role that we've created, which is a pretty strategic role for us. I mentioned conversation designer. So we hired in a conversation designer to look at the flow from start to finish. We have gotten a number of people to do what I would call conversation analyst work. We may make that a full-time role over time. Again, we get some of our engineers to do conversation analysis. An interesting one, which we haven't gotten a dedicated role for this yet, but I foresee we probably will, is prompt engineering. Because the way you present the question that the customer asks to the AI engine will dictate how well the AI engine ultimately answers the question. So you could have two customers who ask what first sight appears to be the same question, but there's slight nuances in terms of how they phrase it. You may actually get a different result back from the AI engine. And I think there's a whole world around prompt engineering where I think we could take both of those and know that ultimately they're trying to ask the same question and phrase it in the right way so that the AI engine will actually have a higher probability of success in terms of answering the question. So prompt engineering is an area that we're
Do you have an example of that you could share?
Not off the top of my head. I'm trying to think what a good example would be. No, not off the top of my head, but again, we have seen where what on first sight appears to be a similar question, and AI will just answer it. And in one case, it might answer it, in another case, it may not answer it. And then when you actually look at it, there's some nuance in how it was asked that you then understand, okay, the AI engine, for some reason, because of that nuance, didn't actually interpret correctly what the customer asked. That's where prompt engineering, I think, can help a lot in taking whatever the customer asks and then translating that into the right question for AI to answer.
Right. Well, I can imagine even just thinking about the software case study, one person could say, how do I do this? Which might be really clear. Whereas another person might say, I tried this and it didn't work. And then I tried this and it didn't work. And, it might be harder for the AI to understand what they're actually asking.
Yeah. Now, one thing that we have done recently, though, we launched what's called clarifying questions in Fin. So Fin will actually, if it's having trouble interpreting, we'll actually ask clarifying questions to the customer to try and really understand is this the question. That's where we've built it in directly into the product itself. But then over and above that, I think, there's an opportunity for prompt engineering to come in over time as well.
Now, you chose to build Fin on ChatGPT. Other platforms have, chosen to build their own AI engines or to do things in a different way. Talk about why you chose to use ChatGPT and how that's working for you.
Well, actually, we're actually using GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 rather than ChatGPT itself. Sorry, we tend to use the names synonymously.
Yes, that's true. Got to be more specific.
It's based on a number of different GPT technologies and also some proprietary technologies that we have ourselves. Okay. And again, we keep a constant eye on how large language models are developing. And we have flexibility to use a variety of models over time if we need to. So we've built it very much as an open approach where we can back end with any kind of large language model depending on how things evolve over time. So very open from that point of view. And we recognize that, again, over time, I think different language models will have different areas of applicability. So again, ensuring that we can actually use our Fin technology in a way that it can take the best of all worlds and deliver ultimately the right solution for the customer is really powerful. So we're not dependent on a single technology. And even as it is, parts of how Fin operates uses GPT 3.5, some uses GPT-4, and I'd say some other proprietary ML and AI technologies that we have ourselves.
Interesting. And talk about the results. How many tickets is Fin touching? How many tickets is Fin answering on its own without intervention from a human?
Yeah, a really good question. So as it kind of progresses, we've increased what we call the resolution rate and the involvement rate. So the involvement rate is where Fin has actually tried to answer the question for a customer. So currently we're at an involvement rate of about 75%. So about 75% of the questions that come into us are being answered, Fin is involved in trying to answer the question. And of those,
in other words, their first touches with Fin, when they first come in, they're talking to Fin.
First touch, or sometimes we now have the capability of launching Fin after the customer starts to engage with it. So they may engage with what we call a custom bot first, which may take them through a little bit of triage, and then we may hand over to Fin. So once Fin is involved in that flow at all, we are counting those as Fin involvement. And
this is all through chat. Are you using Fin for email as well?
So currently it's all through our messenger, so it's all chat based. Over time, we want to deploy it across any source that we have, but at the moment it's chat, which is the vast majority of what we do anyway. And of the conversations where Fin is involved, we're currently getting approximately 40% resolution rate.
Great. Wow.
Which is actually a lot higher than I'd anticipated, because we've got quite a technically complex platform, and we do get quite complex queries in from our customers. So we weren't quite sure where we would land in terms of a resolution rate. But we're currently hovering around 40% in terms of resolution rate, which is actually quite good for the complexity of the environment that we have.
So Fin touches 75% of all interactions, Fin touches, and of that 75%, Fin is just solving 40% of them.
Yeah.
And how did it start out? Was it 40% right off the bat, or how has that improved over time?
Good question. So off the bat, and again, I have to try and remember, but I think it was in and around early 20% is what we got off the bat. And then over time, we've been able to improve it through a number of things. We've improved content for existing products and services. For every new product that we release, we have a target of ideally ensuring the content is good enough to actually hit a 50% resolution rate for any new product that we launch. And by and large, we're hitting that. But the combination of better new product introduction processes and content associated with that, and improving ongoing content, and beginning to use things like snippets, and also underlying improvements in Fin and the large language models, etc. We've kind of, grown to about a 40% resolution rate.
I'm curious how that's
Yeah,
impacted customer satisfaction as well.
Yeah. So overall customer satisfaction is held very well, which is good. The reality is that I think for any AI or bot technology, customers tend to rate it slightly lower than a human interaction. And I think part of it is kind of human nature. Like when you're rating, or giving CSAT for an interaction with a human, you tend to think about the human at the end of the rating. And I think people tend to, unless things are really bad, they would probably give a positive rating. I think people are more neutral when it comes to, I'm dealing with a machine, it's not a human at the end. And I think, there's less propensity maybe to be quite as positive about a machine rather than a human. And I think that's the human nature factor. But CSAT is still very good, because I say overall our CSAT is still holding quite well. But again, the precise CSAT for an automated bot, I think is always going to be slightly lower. And in fact, I've heard that through numerous sources in the industry. That's what people are saying. Now, over time, I'd love that we could think about, how can we make the bot feel a lot more natural, and that people then maybe are more compelled to give a higher rating for that machine part of the journey. But it's holding up very well, because that's one of the things we tested straight away. And we didn't just rely on CSAT ratings. Like we engaged a number of customers. We really tried to get their feedback directly in terms of their first experiences with Fin. Did it feel like it was natural? Did it feel clunky in any way? And again, that has fed back into how we've maybe tuned some of the design piece as well. We've also made or put a lot of effort in maintaining context. So for example, like if Fin has not answered a question, like we know what the customer was asking the question in, and that helps us then in terms of skills-based routing, getting that conversation then to someone who has the right expertise. So maintaining that context was pretty important as well, which also then helps maintain our overall CSAT. Because I say there's still quite a bit of traffic coming through to our human support, and we want to make sure that in adding Fin into the mix, we aren't adding friction that then would impact our CSAT down the line. And I say overall CSAT is held quite strongly.
Are you using any other? Are you using any other tools to measure quality, to measure customer satisfaction? Do you do any voice of the customer analytics to measure customer sentiment? Anything? Do you have a QA analyst who's moderating?
Yes,
who's looking at Fin tickets every week?
So we have a QA function, and so a number of things. Yes, we are QAing, and we are looking at what's the impact of Fin in the conversation, and we look to see does that impact the overall quality of how we're delivering. We do also what we call Fin failure analysis as part of our quality assurance. So if Fin didn't answer the question, why didn't it answer the question? Is it because there's incorrect content, or there's content that's missing, etc.? So we've implemented what we call a Fin failure analysis process. We're also looking at how can we scale out so that we're not reliant on CSAT in terms of understanding, did we deliver a good experience for the customer or not? And we're actually trying to make sure that for every conversation, we can infer whether it was a good experience or not. And that's looking at things like sentiment. So we're beginning to look at sentiment, and we look at what was the sentiment when the customer opened the conversation, what was the sentiment by the time we closed it. So there's lots of dimensions that we're beginning to look at, and AI helps in that regard, because obviously AI can do all that processing for you. And we're actually trying to do that across 100% of our conversations over time. So
now, are you using Fin for that, or do you have a separate tool for doing that sentiment analysis?
So there is some sentiment scoring within Intercom for the Fin part. So we actually generate a sentiment for the Fin part, and we can also generate a CSAT survey for the Fin part of the equation as well. We do use a third-party QA platform, so we actually use one of our partners, Klaus, for QA. And in fact, we're partnering quite strongly with them. They have a really strong vision around being able to infer the customer experience or the customer satisfaction. So we're quite aligned from that point of view. So we work closely with a partner. Yeah.
We like Klaus a lot. We actually just wrote a post for their website. So that's great to hear
Very
that
good.
you're using them and having a great
Yeah.
experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're a key partner for us. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. What about general efficiency gains? Have you been able to like over? It sounds like yes, Finn's able to handle a lot of tickets. How much money would you have you saved? Have you cut the size of your team?
Yeah.
What's happened there in terms of the efficiency of how many tickets your team can handle with what number of people?
So it's a couple of interesting dynamics here. So one, we haven't cut the size of the team at all. But what we have been able to do is absorb quite a bit of growth in our customer demand over the last while. So we've actually used the opportunity of Finn to help support the scale of our business without having to scale out the support team. So that's been kind of quite a big change in terms of the economics of delivering support. So we're not using it to cut headcount or save absolute cost, but we are saving in terms of the overall cost of support as the business scales, which I think is the big benefit of AI. I think too many people are focused a little bit on, will I reduce my headcount? Will I reduce my costs? I think the opportunity is one, enabling your team to absorb more work as the business grows, but also enabling your team to do different work as well. So like when you talk about the efficiency of the team, we're actually, and this is where it gets really intriguing, and some of the finance people have a problem with this. Like we're actually thinking about having people spend less time in the inbox directly with customers, right? Because they actually need to spend more time now around content management, content creation, the QA process, etc. So the nature of the role is changing. The split between direct customer facing activity and non-customer facing activity is different. And like AI is not for free. Like you've got to feed the AI engine, right? And I think that's the piece that a lot of people miss. So they think, great, I've taken out 40% of my transactions. I don't need 40% of my labor. No, number one, you've taken out probably the simplest and less costly transactions from an average handle time point of view. And you only got the 40% because you put an investment in creating the knowledge, maintaining, etc. And it's not a once-off piece of work. It's a continuous piece of work that you got to do. So the nature of this
investment. It's a long-term investment, but it's not free. It's not easy necessarily up front, and it's not free.
Yeah. I mean, getting started is easy. It's kind of driving it then to the kind of optimization that you want, and then maintaining that over time requires ongoing investment. And that's the piece that I think people miss. And the other thing that's really counterintuitive, like average handle time is likely to increase in an AI-driven world because you're taking out all the simple transactions and you're left with more complex transactions that you want your team to spend time on and really ensure that your customers are getting the value that they need from your product or service. So I actually want people to spend a little bit more time with customers. So I don't actually mind that the average handle time is increasing, but it does mean that you got to think differently about capacity planning. A lot of the parameters that you would have taken as rules of thumb in the past, they change in this world. Now, the next phase, and we're going back to the AI features in the inbox. So we kind of pivoted from using the initial products in the inbox that Intercom launched to use Finn and make sure that we are really driving Finn in terms of the customer engagement piece. And we're now pivoting back to look at how do we use AI more strategically within the inbox. And we're doing a lot of enhancements to the features within the inbox at the Intercom level as well. So that will then allow us to maybe drive a little bit more efficiency around how our support agents are both onboarded and how they work on a day-to-day basis. And that will help, I think, drive the efficiency piece over time.
So this is using Finn to help to assist the agents to say, hey, here's a suggested answer, more of that agent assist piece.
More the agent assist piece, improvements to the summarization, improvement to the tone change, etc. So just really moving all of those features on to the next level. And I think we haven't focused a whole lot on them since the initial launch because we pivoted very quickly to use Finn in terms of the customer facing piece. And we now want to kind of go back and say, okay, how can we now use the AI inbox features to actually help our team work differently and hopefully drive efficiencies through that and free up more of the time that we need to feed back into Finn with knowledge management, knowledge creation, etc. So it's a really interesting space. Like there's this kind of, really strong dynamic between humans and AI that is absolutely needed, and not everyone appreciates that. So our mantra, it's all about AI and human support actually delivering the best customer experience possible. And AI is just part of the equation. Like you really got to think about what does it mean from a human support point of view, and you have to pivot to look differently at the time people spend in inbox versus ed inbox. There's the development path. Like you want to make sure there's subject matter experts in your product or service. You got to make sure they're comfortable with creating and managing content and being able to feed back into the AI engine. So it's a new world as such from a frontline support specialist point of view. And it's really interesting. And things are only evolving. Like, there's no best practice in this space yet.
Yeah.
It's really being built as we go along. Like I was talking to someone yesterday, and I felt like Finn's been around for years. Then I realized, no, we only actually made it generally available in May.
Right. It's been 6 months.
It's only been 6 months, yeah. So we're still very much in the infancy of what AI can do. There's a lot more road ahead in terms of new features, capabilities that will come out. So for me, it's probably the most exciting time that I've ever had in the customer service industry, because I've been looking at AI for a number of years, and disappointed at the delivery from AI. Like, we haven't really been able to embrace it pervasively across customer service. And now with generative AI, there's a lot more cool things that we can do with with a lot less effort than we might have thought. Like, yes, you got to think about what you put in and invest in AI, but it's actually not as difficult as maybe I would have anticipated 3-4 years ago, thinking about this world. Whereas now, when it's actually happened, and because of the change in generative AI, you can start quickly. Yeah, you do need to invest to get the optimization, but it's actually a really interesting space to be in, and one where for the support team, like, I think they really love this environment because it is allowing them to do much more worthwhile work. They actually see that they can feed back into the effectiveness of the whole automation and Fin piece as well. So the team are really excited about embracing this opportunity, and new roles, as I say, are involving both as part of the general specialist role, but also very dedicated roles as well, particularly on things like conversation designer, conversation analysts over time, prompt engineers, etc. So the whole new world evolving as well, that'll open up career opportunities for people in support that weren't there before. And I think the support team of the future will look radically different than the support team a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, so regarding the relationship between human support and AI, I think the number one question on a lot of people's minds is AI going to replace me? So what would you say to a person with that question, and how in general has the implementation of AI impacted live agent job satisfaction?
Yeah. So one, will it replace people? Upfront, no. I mean, I think over time, depending on the scale of your operation, and if you're a very large call center and you got thousands and thousands of agents, there's no doubt that you can use AI to probably, either reduce your agent count or allow you to take on a lot more business and scale without having to add additional headcount. But again, large contact centers, they have an attrition problem. They cannot keep people long enough. Like, they have to invest so much in recruitment, etc. I think they'd actually embrace a situation where they could scale without having to scale the headcount at the same level, and it makes for a better environment all around. For smaller scale support organizations, I really see them pivoting to expand the scope of support, and particularly begin to introduce more proactive support motions with their customers, and become more of a consultative role than a transaction role. So it's not just about solving the problem right here, right now. It's actually anticipating what's the next problem that the customer is about to encounter.
And so we began to support agents into more customer success, success agents. And we're seeing that in an e-commerce client that we're working with, where we've optimized their chat. Their chat is now taking their chatbot is now taking a lot of the simple questions, and we're turning the agents into salespeople. So the agents are now able to proactively chat with customers and say, hey, I noticed you were looking at this product. Do you have any questions about it? And so they're able to turn their agents into revenue generators, actually driving sales.
Yeah, or the way we term it is value generators, because for us, we have this concept called customer milestone framework, where we know the customer is in terms of using all of our features and capabilities, and where they are on a maturity model. And we now present that information to our support specialists, and they have this concept of, well, what's the next best action for the customer to move them in terms of getting value from our platform or product. And they can now engage with the customer and say, hey, I've noticed you haven't set up this feature, or it looks like you will need to set up this feature next in terms of your journey with us. And there's a whole set of responses they can give to the customer to point them at the right help center articles or the right academy articles, or take the customer through the process themselves. We now want to build in more of that motion into the support team and make sure they are, you know, really creating value for the customer in terms of how the customer is using our product and service. So yeah, it's a totally, you know, or has the opportunity to totally game change the support environment, and lines between, let's say, customer success, customer onboarding, customer support, they're blurring now, in that a lot of the questions can be fronted by an AI chatbot, and then someone in the background is engaged when it makes sense, and they're bringing their expertise and knowledge to bear for the customer. So yeah, really interesting space for customer support people.
Declan, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate your time. Any final thoughts or lessons learned for our audience, things that you wish you had known when you started doing this?
I think the biggest lesson learned for me is like, don't be afraid to put your toe in the water with AI, but do it in a very intentional way. Know what you're trying to achieve. Communicate early and often with your own team, because very often they will shape your thinking around what's the best thing to do for the customer. So don't lose sight of engaging the team and making them part of the project or program. But do put your toe in the water, because, you know, it's only as you begin to see how your customers interact with it that you begin to learn and understand how you need to tune your content, how you need to tune the conversation flow. So it's a journey, not an endpoint, right? And it doesn't have to be a big bang implementation. You can actually start quite small, iterate on kind of what you learn, and grow from there. And that's exactly what we've done over the last 6 months. Like, we're constantly iterating and growing and improving. And that's something that I hadn't quite anticipated. I would have anticipated this to be more of a big bang implementation, and it's not. You can actually start quite small and learn from it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much.